If you don't have an actual strategy in place, what that means is you're just risking people going down and doing what they think is right and not having a cohesive strategy across your business.
So you're contributing to agent sprawl, unfortunately, even more so the case. So let's talk about what is a good environment strategy, Joe.
Typically what we discuss with customers is let's start with development, then we have test, then we have production.
If you're IT admin, tell me, does this sound familiar to you? Your leadership want you to make agents happen yesterday, and your users are already tinkering with agents. So they are popping out everywhere, from Teams to SharePoint to even external sites. And then you're worried. You're the only person stuck in between thinking about these security and governance questions about who should own these agents and then what kind of exposure should they have. Well, if you're thinking about those questions, then this show is for you. Welcome to Agents Under Control, the show where we talk about how can IT admins take agents from experimentation to scale deployments. Hey everyone, welcome to Agents Under Control. My name is Thomas So. I'm a product marketing manager at Microsoft for Microsoft Copilot Studio. Today, my co-host is Joe Unwin. Joe, a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Joe Unwin. I'm a senior product marketing manager at Microsoft. I work in Thomas's team, focusing on IT for Copilot Studio. I'm also a previous MVP, as well as I worked at partners implementing Copilot Studio at enterprise level.
Well, welcome, Joe. I have to say, I always enjoyed working with you and learning from your MVP stories and then how these implementational ideas actually translate into real-life scenarios. So today, we're going to talk about control agent sprawl. Where should we start, Joe?
Well, I think we should start with environments. It's very important to understand what an environment is and how they can help you scale at an enterprise level.
That's perfect. So we hear a lot about agents popping into default environments, agents sprawling into environments. Tell me, what is environment first? What's the definition of it? How should we think about it?
You should think of environments as a container. So imagine you're developing something, you're making something. You want that to be contained, right? You don't want that to end up in front of your end users because things are changing constantly and you are experimenting. So I would think of an environment as a container that's holding certain aspects of your development process.
I see. So we have heard a lot about tenant level controls that IT admin should do. Mm-hmm. What are environments place with regard to those controls and policies?
Well, you can have tenant level. So your tenant, for those of you that may not know, a tenant is where you're going to have environments within. So your tenant is the high level. You can have controls spanning all of those environments. And then within that, you can have your environments. And then your single environment, you could have a particular set of controls, letting your developers have more freedom, for example, than your production environment, where you want a more controlled and secure environment because you'll be working with live data versus demo data, for example.
So it's almost like environments as a sandbox is working closely with tenant level controls to give IT admins more granular of governance.
Yeah, for sure. And it doesn't have to be done at an individual level. You don't have to just like every single environment set controls across all of that. You have this concept of environment groups where you can actually group environments together. You can add controls to all of those environments and simply work together to scale your business across environments.
Perfect. That sounds like a topic for another future episode. But before I get there, maybe we can do a quick demo around how to set up these environments.
Sure. While I'm walking you through this demo, I'll explain what environments are into a more deeper level as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the admin center. I'll talk about environments and go into it into a deeper level, and we'll create an environment as well to take you through those steps. But firstly, I'm going to click on Copilot Studio just to open up the landing page. And if you click on that little cog on the top right, you'll see the Power Platform Admin Center. Once you click on that, you're going to then see the Power Platform Admin Center home section. You have a load of information here. But if you select Manage on the left-hand side, what that's going to do is it's going to populate all of the environments that you have access to across your tenant. So now we've selected environments, we're going to get a list of environments here. It's all of the environments you have access to across your tenant. You can see the different types, the environment name, the state it's in, the region, etc. And if you select one of those, what that's going to do is it's going to take you into the actual environment where you can then make modifications, you can add users, change security, etc. But if you click up on new at the top left, you're going to get this pop out at the side, and you can select a type. Now, we haven't really discussed what the types are. There is developer, production, trial, and sandbox. Developer is where you're going to be doing development on, but you've also got the option of having a sandbox environment. This is where you're going to be doing as well development as well, and testing and stuff like that. You've got production, which is your main environment. But if you're looking to just get started with Copilot Studio and the Power Platform, you would select a trial environment and it will last 30 days. On top of this, there are personal environments as well, but we'll go into that on a later video. Then you're going to select the region you want it in. So, for example, the United States. You're going to set a name. So I could just say example name. And then I can change the default settings. Like, do I want to get new features early? So what this means is that as soon as they release, I can have them appear in my environment. Or if I wanted to go through a more controlled route, like your IT person says, no, I want to review those changes to make sure nothing is breaking in our environment. You can just have that set to no. And then again, if you want a data store, you can add Dataverse here as well by simply selecting yes or no. Once you hit save, then what that's going to do is it's going to create an environment. However, if you don't have the ability to do so, your tenant's administration has disabled creation for non-admin users, which I'm not an admin user for. That's going to prevent you doing this. So this is how you can prevent people as well. We was talking about tenant level like security and access, etc. That's going to prevent me from creating an environment, so you don't have a situation where you have loads of different developer environments, loads of different test environments, and then production, and you can't keep track of what's going on. So as you can see here, you get blocked. But we've talked about now how you create an environment and where environments are stored. Let's talk about an actual environment strategy then.
Maybe what we can discuss a little bit is about what would happen if you don't have a environment strategy.
Okay. Well, it's very interesting. As I mentioned previously, right? Like, I've been blocked because they've told me, okay, you don't have access to create environments. If I didn't have an environment strategy and I just let anyone create any environment, I could be going, okay, well, I'm going to create Joe's developer environment. You could create Thomas's developer environment. We could be working on the same project, but we've got different versions in our environment. So then I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to push it. Yep, we're good to go. We're going to push it to test now. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to push it to testing users, but it's in a completely different, like, out of sync cycle. We could end up duplicating work. We could end up having conflicting like columns or data or anything like that. It will cause more pain than it's worth, I would say. If you don't have an actual strategy in place, what that means is you're just risking people going down and doing what they think is right and not having a cohesive strategy across your business.
So you're contributing to agent sprawl, unfortunately, even more so the case.
Yes, and I wouldn't say that people would be doing that on purpose. They would just unfortunately be trying to do their best, right? And they're thinking, okay, well, maybe I need an environment to do my development in, not knowing that someone else has got a development environment, could be working on the same type of things. They could be pulling solutions around everywhere. It can just get really messy. So yeah, you could have agent sprawl as a ramification of this.
Absolutely. So let's talk about what is a good environment strategy, Joe.
Yeah, so typically what we discuss with customers is, let's start with development, then we have test, then we have production. So that simple environment strategy is a easy way to have a developer environment where people are working together, they're contributing to an agent, for example, or multiple agents in one environment. It gets developed, then it gets moved over to test. You then get people to come in that are not their developers that will test this agent to see if it's working. So you'll get your stakeholders in at this point. They'll check, they'll give feedback if there's any bugs or any issues or anything like that. they can then tell the developers, who can then iterate, make the changes, and send it back to test. Once that's done, if it goes through testing and everyone is happy, you can then roll that out to production, your production environment, which will then allow users to go through the process of actually using the agent that you've created to their benefit and scaling with the business.
What I'm hearing is your environment strategy should adhere to your operational reality, right? So what are the requirements in your organization to make implementation happen? Mirror that setup with your environments.
Yeah, for sure. So this is just a simple take on an environment strategy, but it can go much more complex. When I was working with some customers wanted to go through having a developer environment and a test environment. So the people that were like the project owners would test what the developers had created in the test environment, and then they would roll it out to a user acceptance testing. So people in the business would then do testing before going into production. And what that allows is, if you have a Microsoft partner come in to work for your business, it allows the partner to have their own dev and test environment before the business actually gets involved, so they can go through a cycle, and then it goes through another cycle of testing, like a user acceptance testing.
Thank you, Joe. We actually have another special guest today, Griffin, who is MVP for Microsoft and implements Copilot Studio all the time. Now let's hear from him about his experiences implementing environment strategy. Okay, thank you, Griffin, for being here. Why don't you start with a little bit of intro of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thomas, thanks for having me. I'm Griffin Lickfelt. I'm a Microsoft MVP and Power Platform Solution Architect, and super excited to be here. I tend to spend most of my time talking about agents and Copilot Studio and across the Microsoft ecosystem.
Lovely. So in this episode, we talked about environment strategy and how it's a good starting point for IT admins to keep their agents under control. In your experience, what tends to go wrong when there aren't a environment strategy?
Yeah, the reality is this stuff is messy, right? And so citizen developer work is, I have the citizen developer brand and my own content and everything, but often it is not necessarily aligned with best practices. These aren't necessarily professional software developers. And so we need to empower citizen developers to have a playground. And so what do I think that necessarily means? I think it kind of means two things. And that playground, really, the first one being that it's not really something that maybe you as an IT admin need to be really concerned about managing it. And what I mean by that is giving people a place to build and play. And you're okay with that fact in that container of that environment. The second thing is making builders feel encouraged to experiment, innovate. And for example, if they have a potential or a fear that they could break something or break production data or delete a customer or something like that, this will not happen. They will not innovate. And so making that expectation clear and having a playground that's actually effective is, I think, what's really important.
Perfect. Well, if you're interested in this content, feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel, and then we'll come back with more.